request. So we're going to record. And for the first part of our conversation here, I'm going to spotlight us, Andy, um, and then we're also going to be taking questions from our friends here. But I'm so grateful to have Andy Raine with us. Andy, as many of you know, is author, editor of this lovely book, the Celtic Daily Prayer Book. This is book two. There's also a book one, which I still haven't been able to get, Andy. Is that going to become like re-available?
I'm asking questions. We assume it will be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, the copyright's supposed to revert to us, so that would be a headache. But we'll see what we can do.
Okay. But Andy's also written other books, is a speaker on Celtic spirituality. He's also a fantastic dancer and has dance ministry as part of the many things that he does. So thank you so much for being here, Andy. Really appreciate it.
Yep.
And would love for us to start if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit first that this is a particular saint day, and I forgot to mention it in the morning call. So could you tell us what saint we are celebrating today?
We're celebrating Martin of Tours, or Martin, as they say, and Saint Martin. And he's really quite a crucial figure in that he's looked to by all kinds of different branches of Celtic spirituality as somebody who is a major figure emerging out of the time uh, after the Desert Fathers and Mothers. And he impacts people in Wales and famously Ninian, who set up a whole kind of university at Whithorn in the southern part of the overlapping bit of Scotland lower than the border, if you can imagine that. Yeah.
Lovely.
So
And we're going to our afternoon prayer time is going to be a liturgy. That one's not published, the one you shared with me,
not
the
yet. No.
book. So great. So thank you for sharing that with us, Andy. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Anything you want to add to the very short biography I gave of you, and just has Celtic spirituality been a part of you since a wee lad, or a little bit about your own journey? We'd love to hear.
Uh, I came to the island once on a day trip with my family during a foot and mouth outbreak. I remember that because my sister's friend was a farmer's daughter and she was horrified and took a lot of convincing to get out of the car in case she accidentally took some infection back on her shoes or something to the farm she lived on. So that dates it.
How
And
old were you when that happened?
pardon?
How old were
How
you?
old?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was a tall youngster in long, short trousers. And we found years after I was already living here, and this was going to be where I was going to be for my life. We found this photograph that dropped out of some papers, and it was taken on an old box camera in black and white. And this picture of a small boy in long short trousers looking up into the face of Aiden. And I vaguely remember my dad saying, "You stand there and look at that while I take this." And I don't think he had any idea who Aiden was, or it just was a good photo opportunity. And hold on 1 second, I'll get you the photograph.
Yeah, yeah. Please do.
Is that visible?
Oh, little, yeah. Yes, right there. Wow. So there's a young Andy looking up at the statue of
Yep.
Saint Aidan on Holy Island. That's fantastic.
So that was the one time I was on the island previously. And then I was a student in London and I was busy having an argument with God. Some of you won't relate to that, but many of you might. And I was saying to him, "So, where are you sending me?" And I wasn't expecting an answer. I was just being rhetorically irritated. And so there was a reply. It wasn't an audible voice, but it was enough to make me turn around. And I
Mm,
knew what had been said, and it was Holy Island.
mm,
So I thought typically you wait for God to speak to you, and when He does answer, He doesn't answer your question, He just changes the subject. So I was saying, "Where are you sending me?"
mm,
And here he starts talking to me, presumably about a retreat, because the only thing I knew about Holy Island was it was a place where there was a retreat house. So I ended up going to Holy Island for a weekend. And while I was there, God spoke to me. And I realized quite quickly that he'd already answered the question, "Where are you sending me?" And the answer was Holy Island, not on a retreat. But I finished my degree and moved immediately to Holy Island. So
and so what did you do? What, like just moving the Holy Island and how
I
did you?
just worked at a retreat house, the same one that I knew about.
Yeah.
And for a while, that was enough. It was it was all a learning journey.
Mm,
And then after so long, we got to the point where I realized that we were only interacting with people who'd booked to come on retreats. That meanwhile, there were people wandering around the island being hit by the presence of God, because this is a real thin place, you know, and they were wanting or needing to talk out their experience incoherently.
mm,
And there were just people like that you would meet every time you went for a walk.
yeah.
And I wanted to be in a place where I could interact with those people when they came to the island, not just the people who'd booked and were turning up at the retreat house because they'd scheduled it into their diary, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
so I took a part-time job on the car parks at a point when we needed some extra staff. And the retreat house people said, uh, "Oh, no, we can't have you doing that part time. You're either working here full time or not." And that was fine until I understood that. Until I tried to write the letter resigning from the job, and I couldn't do it.
Mm,
So that became another whole story.
mm,
But the community was something that for me grew out of a calling to Holy Island. And what I experienced that first weekend when I came up was I bumped into all kinds of experiences that I wouldn't have anticipated. I was left alone in the church at night for a short time while my friend Douglas took some sheets back to the retreat house. And when he came back, uh, I didn't know he was even there, but he was very excited. He said, I'd been dancing, I'd been praying, and I'd been singing in tongues and so on. And he said, it was amazing. You were singing Celtic melodies. I'd never heard the word Celtic in my life.
mm,
And he said, and the place you were lying was was where we believe Aidan's original altar was. I'd never heard of Aidan either, so that was interesting. It just went on like that. And I found that what was happening to me on the island was I was bumping into something that was beyond my experience. This was a prayed in place, and it became evident to me that it wasn't just the prayers of the people who were keeping rhythms of prayer now, but the prayers of the people who had been here and prayed centuries before, but somehow had changed this place forever. And I couldn't work out whether it was like a series of blank checks that were written from those previous prayers that we just had to fill in the missing signature or something, or put our name in,
yeah.
or whether that prayer is still continuing, that Aidan and his friends still keep an eye on the place and are cheering us on, and somehow, I think it's both, if I'm honest.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
And
Mm,
but I knew nothing. I knew nothing. Now I know a little more. But everything I know has been an exploration of making sense of what happened for me by
yeah.
coming here.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went from there, from knowing nothing to, I forgot to mention, of course, you were one of the founders of the Northumbria community. And it's out of the Northumbria community that the Celtic Prayer Book was birthed. Is that correct? Could you
Yeah.
just tell us a little bit about that journey, a little bit about the Northumbria community, how it came together, and how you all, birthed the Celtic Prayer Book?
We were exploring scriptures, particularly from the story of Caleb and Caleb's daughter, about the upper and the nether springs. And Joshua and Caleb, remember, went to scout out the land. And then Caleb, 40 years after the people had said, "Oh, no, 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 too scary," and gone round in circles for 40 years, he goes in, he says, "Give me this mountain." And then his daughter um, marries Othniel. You know the story, I'm sure, who is her cousin. And the dowry that Caleb gives to Othniel is this particular piece of land in the Negev. And it says she got off her ass and she went to her father, which is really great. I mean, they were obviously writing for an American audience in the King James. And so it said, um, she got off her ass and went to her father and said, "Father, you've given me this dark, desert, barren land. Now will you give me also springs that I might water this land? I might irrigate it." And it says the father gave her the upper and the nether springs. So we were convinced that the upper springs, in terms of our dark patch that we use, um, is was Holy Island. It was a place where you bumped into this spiritual presence, and people seemed to be sent out from here. They would come here instinctively when they were about to start something new. So it was a place of launching and endeavor. And it was also the place where Aidan chose as his base when he came here to evangelize the Anglo Saxon, which would become the English speaking people.
Mm,
And but there was this, in that same scripture, the idea of the nether springs, the deeper springs, the hidden springs, somewhere kind of south of there. And so if we were looking for a place which would be a home for the nether springs, a place where people could go and dig deep and be supported in that spiritual journey. So me and a couple called John and Linda Skinner were the people who were particularly carrying that heart. And the community grew out of that gradually over the years. We used to have Easter gatherings where people came from all over. And um, I moved back to the island the same year that we found our first mother house
mm,
for the community. Is
yeah.
that making some sense?
Yeah.
We started doing these pattern of offices and so on. I mean, the morning, midday, and evening offices were written in one evening by me and John
Oh,
for one
wonderful.
of our Easter gatherings. We thought, well, it was time we had our own office, so we constructed um, like a mock-up of what a Northumbrian office might be,
Mm,
and we tried it. We trialed it that following Easter with our people, and they all said, "When can we have it permanent?" So we went on and gathered the meditations and so on,
yeah.
and then started doing daily readings, which we sent out to people to put in their filofax. I don't know if you had a filofax.
Yeah.
Daytimers, did you call them? Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
little. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we used to mail them out, trying to get them there before the first of whatever the next month was. And part of my job was to do the editing of those. That was before it was ever taken on by HarperCollins. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Andy. I realize we've talked about Saint Aidan and Holy Island, but could you give us the brief kind of Celtic history of the island? Because I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with how Celtic spirituality came to Holy Island.
What's really, really interesting is that this was a place that was primarily, its history isn't of having Celtic people here indigenously at all, but we have an Irish monk who came via Scotland and became the missionary to the Anglo-Saxon people because Prince Oswald had become a believer on Iona, where he'd gone as a refugee. And so then, when he was old enough to be coming to potentially win back the kingdom from a time of conflict, at that point, he came back the son of a bloodthirsty warlord,
Mm.
and his army was made up of two lots of people, people who'd come down with him from Dalriada in Scotland, and were by and large Christian people, and then the people who were coming because he was his father's son, and they were Woden worshipping pagans, and a bloodthirsty lot, and they expected him to be just like his father, and were absolutely horrified when he insisted on them kneeling in front of a cross before they set out to claim the kingdom back. So once it had been established, and the guy who came as the military chaplain and didn't like any of that went back in disgust because he was so horrified by these Anglo-Saxons and their barbaric ways. Um, Aidan came. He spoke out at a meeting on Iona, which was a post-mortem of this failed Northumbrian mission. And so he spoke the obvious and realized that he'd accidentally talked himself into a job. And he came. And it's interesting, the coat of arms for Holy Island says, Ecce ego mitte me, here I am, send me.
Mm.
And that sort of echoes what Aidan had uh, done accidentally. He talked himself into that availability.
Was that
And
around
he came,
the year 635 or around there?
yeah, yeah, you're on the right track, yes, with the dates.
Mm.
And so he came, and he chose a place the same size as Iona, but a different shape. And this was the place. And so it's really funny because, we're not people of a Celtic language here. And yet, as soon as people start talking about Celtic pilgrimage sites, they start talking about Northumbria very, very quickly. So we're honorary Celtic, you know, we're
Yeah.
Celtic by adoption because the person who came and brought the mission to Northumbria and was Aidan, and he and his followers managed to take the gospel in all directions and plant it so successfully that even parts of London were evangelized from this little place. They call it a cradle island.
Mm.
Mm.
And just to be clear, so folks know, like the retreat house, the Northumbria community is not located on the island, but it's just
Our
inland.
mother house is about 45 minutes away,
Yeah.
further south at the moment. But its predecessor was next to Cuthbert's Cave,
Mm.
and that was interesting. We called it Nether Springs, and when we were to rent this property, the people saying to us said, um, one of the problems with the number of people you envisage coming here, the water supply might not be adequate. We're only fed from a single spring here. And
Mm.
when they were doing the work preparing the ground for us taking on the house, somebody found themselves standing in a puddle, and they'd accidentally hit something and released another spring. So it became literally the place of the nether springs, the springs from underneath that came up. And so
Fantastic.
that was a nice sign.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
were there for many, many, many years. And then the mother house moved to a different place.
That's wonderful. I do want to give opportunity for folks to chat with you, ask questions. So we're gonna, if things are coming up that you want to put in the chat or come off a mute in a minute here, I'll be inviting you to do that. Um, but Andy, I wonder if you could give us like a just kind of a um, we've been working with the Listening for the Heartbeat of God book, and we've been kind of unpacking what we're discovering are themes of Celtic spirituality. And I wonder if you would just kind of unpack your own, if you were to give the elevator pitch of Celtic spirituality, To somebody who doesn't know anything about it, what would you say is that heartbeat?
You're saying the elevator pitch, you meaning with somebody you're stuck in an elevator with? Is that what
Yeah,
you mean?
yeah. They're like, oh, you
Yeah,
know about Celtic spirituality. I'm getting off on floor seven.
yeah, yeah. So I would say one of the things would be a flexibility,
Mm,
an openness to all comers. One of the pictures of Bridget is living with arms wide open, and that's also a picture of the cross.
mm,
That we're to have a heart that's exposed, and we would say that that heart that's exposed is, of course, the heartbeat of Jesus that John leans against at the Passover Seder. And in the same way that the 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 living world, the creation itself, speaks to us everything that the scriptures would speak, and does it more immediately for people. When you think that most people never ever read, they would only have encounters of God and then that be supported by conversations with other people. But they had an experience of the created world that was part of that same whole thing that made perfect sense to them. And I would say that part of that is also to do with the fall, even is self-evident in the created order. You have things like entropy and so on, which are pretty nasty, but a part of life. There clearly was something perfect that was created, and then something went wrong. And so I think even that is there. Um, so this reconciliation thing is there, but less and less of an emphasis on, woe is me. I loved what you did there with the Jesus prayer.
yeah,
Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the Living God,
yeah,
have mercy on me, your beloved. I mean, that's absolutely exactly Celtic spirituality in every way.
mm,
And the other thing was that the scriptures were really, really precious and live to people, so that those who had the chance to study them and memorize them, that became the thing that framed their thinking, that framed their exploration, their questioning, their
mm,
their experience. And the Psalms in particular seem to connect with every possible thing, a whole range of experiences that are able to articulate what people go through. And I think that was really vivid. Um, and Aidan in particular used to go and connect with individual people and listen to their story. He had a recognition that whoever he met had something to teach him,
mm,
and that he would meet them one to one. He would travel not on horseback because he didn't want to be associated with being the us and them, the haves rather than the have nots. He was identified with people with their feet on the ground,
mm,
and he would treat them with respect and answer their questions.
mm.
Um, is that enough to be going on with?
I think so.
And it's
We'll
the
see
opposite
if
of this
others have
Roman
questions.
thing where everything's got to be controlled and everything's to do with how bad we all are.
Mm,
We don't need telling how bad we all are. We have the capacity to be bad, and we know it. We
yeah,
just have to stop enjoying that.
yeah. Last of my questions for now. Um, do you have favorite Celtic saints? One,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Aiden, Aiden,
Well,
Aiden.
Aiden. Yeah, yeah. Who else would you name as, favorite?
Mm, I've got a big heart for a guy called Reinfrid, who you wouldn't call Celtic, but he's another adopted Celt in the sense that there are three men and a donkey who come north from a place called Evesham and Winchcombe next to it. And one of them has read in Bede's history of the English church and people of these wonderful communities uh, in the shadow of the Celtic input there. And he instead is meeting refugees who've come from these places that have been destroyed first by the Vikings and now by the Normans. And uh, and he says it's wrong that these places should be laid waste. And the three men and a donkey come north, but one of them is Reinfrid, and he's been a mercenary soldier.
Mm.
And his son was a steward to the Percys in Northumbria, and he ends up being part of the destruction of Whitby,
Mm.
and it scars him so badly. The cruelty that he sees in this particular mission, uh, different kind of mission, um, means that he stops being a soldier altogether, stops being a mercenary, and he goes he goes to a monastery as far away as he can from Whitby, which has so scarred him. And there, this other guy comes over just as he's getting settled and starts talking about the refugees and all the places they've come from. And he's questioning where they come from. And they've come from places like Wearmouth and Whitby and so on. And so he just has to say the word Whitby, and the guy is completely destroyed. He's Reinfrid.
Mm.
And instead, he says, "You've got to go back. You've got to transform these places and take me with you."
Mm.
And so Reinfrid's a particular hero of mine. I
Nice.
just think of him spending the rest of his life redeeming and restoring the ruined places. And the ruined places are in people's lives, but they're also in physical places that, so that the building behind you on your screen there, Jeff,
Yeah.
is the ruins of one of the places that was built um, as part of the vision that these guys had to come and restore the ruined places.
Mm.
That particular one is a ruin because they took the stones to build the castle
Mm.
many years later.
Wonderful. Well, Andy, I'm going to remove the spotlights from us so
Good.
we can open this up for, yeah, any questions or anything you all want to inquire. Hannah, go.
Anna.
Go for it.
Hello, thank you so much for being with us today. The daily offices have been a part of my spiritual practice for the past like 6 months or so. And the songs from the Northumbria community as well have been something my children are now singing. So I am so grateful to you. My question is maybe not the most fully defined yet, but something I've been struggling with as I have found so much in this, and then also in the prayers of the Carmina um, is like knowing that I am also a white American and we have a history of appropriation of traditions that aren't ours. And so to engage in these practices alone, I'm always a little worried about appropriation and about trying to run away from some of the brokenness of the tradition that I am indigenous to by claiming another tradition that sort of like sounds better in some way. So I wondered if that sort of with that sort of huge dilemma, I wondered if you could speak to that at all for those of us um, who might be drawn to this tradition and these practices uh, and want to engage in them authentically and respectfully without uh, and internalize them and have them and find our place in them, but to do so in a posture of respect and not one of colonialism.
I think that's an easy one to me. You could say that some of you will have some Celtic blood in you anyway, but that almost becomes a distraction because that's not what makes it. It might resonate with you because of that. Something in your blood kind of chimes with it. But the key thing is that some of the most important places that of Celtic spirituality are not from people who were Celtic by blood anyway. So it's not that; it's what we laziness call Celtic spirituality, what was it that was carried by them that somehow was alternate to the direction that Rome went and that the church went and Augustine went and all of these things, the anti-Semitism, the moving away from the simplicity of the gospel, the pursuing um, riches and credibility and power and saving face and all of those things. And then you get the contradictions to that in people like Francis, who was also influenced by Celtic spirituality, we believe. You know, he lived near Bobbio. But also because what we're looking to is something that predates it being called Celtic. We're looking to the spirituality of John, who leaned on the breast of Jesus, and the continuity beginning to come through the disciples of John and so on, and how the same themes keep recurring as you follow through that line of discipleship. And they echo things that are going back. So Martin influences all kinds of people. But what are the things that we don't call ourselves Celtic? We call ourselves people who are appreciative of Celtic spirituality, and then that's authentic. Because what we're saying is, this has touched me, and the fact that it has touched me is authentic. I don't call myself a Celt, you know,
Mhm.
but there is something. And then the second thing is, what did Aidan and the others do, and John and each of the characters that we follow through? You find that they went to people who were of a different race to them or a different tribe to them, and they treated the people they met with respect, and they recognized that they had things to learn from these people and were open to that. So similarly, we go to indigenous peoples, we go to other peoples that who we don't understand where they're coming from. If that was a Mormon or if that was somebody who has been through all kinds of New Age places and is still um, pursuing truth, pursuing stuff. Most of us are people who are searching. We're still people who are seeking God, and we seek God and we find Him everywhere. He's outside the camp most of the time. He's there reaching out to the people who we might even disapprove of. Well, perhaps our disapproval needs re-educating. Our assumptions need re-educating. If there were people who ever needed re-educating, it's Americans. We all know that. And I'm not saying that as a judgment. I'm just saying that the assumption that when we go to somebody that we are right and they are wrong, and that at very least we have something which we are going to impose upon them, that's something that we need to worry about and say, but you're already worried about it. So that seems to me to be a good place to be coming from, where you treat somebody who you don't understand with respect and say, what can I learn from you? Even if it's only learning that the things you thought you knew about that person are all wrong. You know what I mean? And what you may find is that what resonates between you and that person is the fact that you're weeping for children whose lives are being ruined by whatever. It doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? It's like the grief in us and the pain of the world and the way we relate to people rather than box things up into some kind of a building or church or people who just tell you that you're wrong and that you're not acceptable just for being you, you're not acceptable. The times that thing has happened to us might be the thing that helps us to resonate with somebody else, but we don't necessarily tell them that. They just feel comfortable with us because they feel not judged. And I don't know.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Hannah. Somebody else have anything? Want to inquire of Andy?
Hmm.
I have a question.
Go for it.
What does a day in the life of Andy look like?
Let's see. These days, I'm out in order to be usually at the Cuthbert Centre for 9:30, where we do morning office. We're doing that now with people from the the different churches and retreat houses and so on, and whoever turns up. It's just taking the trigger of one person deciding that that was what they were going to do, and because they were using our office, we decided to combine forces and just do that. And now that's my usual rhythm to begin the day, and then it'll be whatever else is on the calendar or whoever else gets in touch. So, like I was just saying to Jeff, I've come in from running whist from 1 o'clock till, you know, I don't know, half four or something like that, which we do on a Tuesday. Sometimes there'll be a Zoom call where we're doing listening, um, kind of listening from what God has to say to us, where you silence the voice of the enemy, silence your own preconceived ideas. That's a good discipline through the whole of life, to silence your preconceived ideas, but at the same time, trust in the things that have been true for you. So, like Hudson Taylor used to say this thing about, he used to put two flags, one on either side of the mantelpiece. One said, Ebenezer, thus far as the Lord, brought me. And on the other side, Jehovah Jireh. And that kind of summed everything up. So we've learned things so far that have proved true in our lives. So we put our weight on them, but we're also always learning more. And when we do, we revise our understanding, So God is infinitely greater than our present understanding of his infinite greatness. And that should be a life journey of, just like in any other relationship, you're getting to know each other more and put yourself in different circumstances, and you suddenly see a different aspect of this person who you thought you knew. And you go, whoa, what was that? Whatever. Yeah. That makes some sense. No.
Yeah, and then like dinner time
People
is
turn
the
up here.
meal.
People turn up on the island. Yeah.
People turn up. And so do you spend most of your time in community with the visitors or with the community of your group of people that you've
I would
established?
say mostly with visitors and people who we have a degree of relationship with, or instinctively that becomes something where people. So Jeff, for instance, I'm amazed how little time we've had with each other, because I feel a real resonance with him. And when we totted up how much time we'd had together, it was almost nothing, but it was really something. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that kind of connection happens, and often it's with somebody who's not a believer at all, and that's good. And you don't think in the way of, oh, now this is my opportunity to bring this person to faith. That's something God's doing. I just have to, most of all, keep out of the way of that process and not mess it up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
I do.
if there's a particular nudge, I can remember when I used to be hitchhiking everywhere, and I would pray really hard before the lift arrived. And then I would try very hard to let there be no God talk ever happen. And then a little bit like Philip turning up with the guy, the Ethiopian, he hitches a lift with somebody and discovers that they're reading the scriptures and they're puzzled and want an answer to their question. When you get in a wagon with a lorry driver, and suddenly they start telling you about the way, they're reaching out for God or something, you still think, I'm going to try very hard not to. But the more hard you try not to, clearly God has arranged a connection. But the connection might be something that is a preparatory thing, But God's got that in hand, I try and not get in the way. Um,
Mm,
does that make
beautiful.
sense?
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I'm curious about something when you mentioned creation and that something went wrong. And then just a moment ago, you talked about the enemy. And one of the things that had struck me in the Newell book we're reading is that there's this caution about thinking of Celtic spirituality as only the good and only the affirming, only the life-giving. Um, and it seems like there's a deep recognition of the pain and the suffering and the evil,
Absolutely.
but and also not an attempt to describe why it's there. Does that I'm just curious about it.
I think it's whether there's an unhealthy focus on evil, on pain, on suffering, on all of those things, or whether there is a recognition that there is cruelty around us, that there is things that hurt, there is things that have been damaged. Now, that doesn't mean that we're celebrating the damage,
No.
but to pretend that it isn't there would be crazy. We have to deal with all kinds of things that happen in our life. And we also have to recognize that there is a fall. I mean, when you start going through the Celtic stuff, they're celebrating Michael because he's the one who is attacking the fallen angels and things. This stuff is there right through Celtic spirituality, but it's not the major theme, and it certainly isn't that we are so bad that God can't reach us. That is an aberration that creeps into the spirituality of the church later
Mhm.
and becomes something that has you get it with people trying to evangelize, and the first thing they do is they try and convince somebody how bad they are, so that and they're saying, yeah, Christ is the answer, and they're saying, yeah, but what was the question? I don't get it. So it's as if evangelism, not in the non-Celtic world, becomes tell somebody how sinful they are and how bad they are and try and make them feel guilty, because then we come with a solution to their guilt. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Whereas that isn't necessarily what people experience. They experience disappointment. They experience a world that is full of problems that need to be addressed. And maybe the Spirit of God is more about giving them um, ways to address things that need solving. And that while they're participating in God's purpose in the earth like that, like feeding the hungry and caring, clothing the naked, and all the rest of it, the person who's inspired to do that, or who's not a believer, is still part of what God is doing in that world, and they're more likely to encounter Him in doing that than they are by being told how awful they are. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. It seems like it's a little bit like Buddha, where the he says, "Well, get the arrow out. It doesn't matter who shot it. Let's pay attention to getting the arrow out."
The arrow that has hurt somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. But I think there's a recognition of evil, but not a celebration of evil.
Mm-hmm.
So, Andy, as well, we have about 10 minutes left. I want to do our little prayer meditation, but would you have a word of encouragement for us Americans in our particular moment? Maybe around how our yearning, our journey with Celtic spirituality might be a way of helping to inform how we can show up in a country that's very divided right now.
I think one of the things is about holding things in balance, holding people who are being forced apart by algorithms and by rich people and by people making assumptions that if I believe this thing and you believe that thing, we have nothing in common. And I think the people uh, who are voicing one half of an issue and the people who are voicing the other half of the same issue need to hear each other. And if they can see each other and meet eye to eye, if they can see this person not as a label, but as a person, then we may find that the two things that are inspiring these two different groups of people, like a hatred of cruelty, it might be a hatred of cruelty, a hatred of abortion. Both of those things are really, really important. Do you know what I mean? but but then somebody else is saying, but we don't want to be bullied. Well, no, we don't want to be bullied. So therefore, they're pro-choice, pro-abortion. I'm using that one because it's an old one that we're familiar with. And the answer is we don't want anybody to be having their life scarred by things that will destroy them. And that includes the babies, that includes the people, it includes the parents, it's everybody. Things go wrong, and we need a lot of compassion in those areas. And we need a lot of ability to take the masks off where somebody says that person is your enemy. That person is not your enemy. That person is somebody you haven't heard yet what's making them tick. You haven't heard why they have these assumptions. They may just be rehearsing things that somebody else told them. And let's be open to everybody, and let's bless our enemies. Bless those who disagree with us. Bless them, bless them, bless them, bless them, bless them. Ask God to bless them, and then we won't be able to hate them. The more we ask God to bless our enemies, the more we'll learn to have compassion and recognize how easy it is for us just to resent and lash out and be irritated.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was a prayer in a kind of a way.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely don't see much blessing of each other happening right now. And
We've just been sent by one of our people 31 ways to pray for blessing over your enemies. And then you have one of them for every day of the month.
wow. Yeah.
If you haven't managed to shift your heart by the end of the month, then God help us.
A question before we do the liturgy from Beth wants to know how we connect with the Northumbria community and visit. I will send out the website. I think I already did that once, but I will
It's
send it out.
getting slightly better. Yeah, I noticed it's been upgraded a little bit, but if it's clunky, then you can always direct them to me, and I'll do my best to.
Great. Yeah.
Lovely to meet with you guys. Privilege.
Really grateful for you, Andy. Thank you for your generous spirit and your loving presence. Glad we get to do this. And yeah, we met for a day in 2011 and then got to spend a couple hours in this past July. But appreciate you like a brother from a long time. So as we go into Ebenezer, you have a question? Go ahead.
Will it not be beautiful for all of us on this group to pay a physical visit?
Oh,
What about that?
Yeah, that
Let's make it happen.
yeah. Beth will coordinate it for us.
we'd love to see you.
Thank you, Beth. Thank
I
you for
would,
doing that.
I would love to take a group of leaders there. I will definitely hold that.
Yes.
And Andy, as we go into the liturgy for Saint Martin, could you tell us just like the short version of his story that's tied up in that liturgy?
Are we going to do the story as part of it or not? Are you going to read it?
I guess I could just read it. Should I just do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that because that's all I would say.
All right. I will read the story and we will go into the liturgy that shares the story. And just like we've done before, just where the little red asterisks are, I invite you just to jump in at that moment. And don't be shy. This is a little bit slightly longer liturgy. And then the bold parts we will say together. But here is the story of Saint Martin. Martin, it was in 316 to 397, still present and deployable. Martin was the son.
Still, can I interrupt?
Oh,
It's not
still.
still present. It's
Yeah.
still.
Still present and deployable.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Martin was the son of a Hungarian officer in the Roman army and drawn to Christian faith. Wanting to be baptized, his deepest dream was to embrace the life of prayer as a hermit. His father had him press ganged into the military, training to be an officer, and hoped that would be an end to his exploration of Christianity. Martin trained as a soldier, but had not seen active combat. Instead, his task was to patrol on horseback, keeping a circular route through the city of Amiens, where he was stationed. During a severe winter, many of the inhabitants were perishing from cold, and Martin did what he could to help them. Seeing a poor man shivering in a gateway, completely naked, Martin was moved with compassion and with his sword sliced his fur-lined officer's cloak in two, giving the warmer section to the man for clothing. The experience unsettled him, and that night as he slept, the poor man appeared to him in a dream, singing to him, "Martin, you have clothed me with this cloak." It was Christ. Soon, in an outbreak of conflict, Martin and his men were ordered into battle, and to first burn incense to the emperor. Martin found himself unable to cooperate with this, nor would he kill a living soul. But it was not cowardice that drove him to this decision, and so he agreed to be put in the forefront of the battle the next day, unarmed and unprotected. The emperor Constantius held him to that, but at the last moment, the opposing army brokered for peace. Martin was let go and even released from the army. He lived as a hermit and began to plant communities of hermits, though he himself was still a young man. Eventually, the citizens of Tours secretly elected him as their bishop, and he found himself kidnapped again. Undeterred, he asked only to be fetched his three-legged stool, which he sat on to say his prayers. Friends, let us pray together. I'll do the first one. I grieve at willing hearts misled, at wasted lives sacrificed on the altar of men's selfish pride.
I see good hearts heroically engaged in resisting cruelty and violence.
I see loyalty and courage, bravery and friendship.
Peace I bless, yet resist the hungry gods of war, demanding the dead in battle, the slaughter and lives shattered, the cost too great in fighting for many a cause.
Why
Why
then
then
should
should
we
we
die?
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 How
How then
shall
shall
we
we
How
live?
live?
we live? Right choices freely followed in your spirit's mighty power will result in acts of service flowing from a grateful heart.
Even the violence of words seems too aggressive, jarring on my spirit. If I am to myself at last to become true, my own self, my hidden self.
I count as nothing my high horse, high rank, high place.
I cut through all comfort of career, of prospects, of privilege and promotion.
I cut my cloak in two, seeing only nakedness and need.
Let
Let us
us each
become
become
Gift
a
the
Gift
gift
of
of
Gift
refuge,
of
refuge,
warmth,
refuge,
and
warmth and
strengthening.
warm and
strengthening.
strengthening.
Extend
Extend the
the
mantle of
And the
mantle of
mantle of
compassion and
compassion
compassion
and
humility,
and
humility,
humility,
warming the
warming
warming
the
forsaken
the
with peace,
forsaken
forsaken
with
with
loving
love.
tears.
loving
loving
tears.
tears.
The sword, fine sharpened, fit to kill, tore only my fur-lined cloak in two, like soul and spirit sliced asunder. Now no longer naked man. He looks at me, looks right at me, and shivering still, I ride back to my barracks, stumble to my bed, and into sleep.
Music lightens on me from my dream. You sing, yes, you have clothed me with the warmth of this cloak. And my Lord, it was you.
And
and my
my
Lord,
Lord,
It
it
was
It was
It
you.
was
you.
you.
The dream is true, and it is you, and you sing over me with love.
As you sing over me, I am ready, Lord, to stretch out the border of the mantle, go further and extend the reach of my tent, and encompass the needy, the broken. Those once called unloved are loved by you, and now by you in me.
My accustomed place is watching on the boundaries, encompassing, but always looking further, ready to reach out.
My life, yours only to command, yielded, not taken from me, is the extra mile, the baggage carried, unenslaved, unconscripted, uncoerced.
There I say, stand me in the front line of the battle, courage in the face of any foe, unarmed and unafraid, rescue only by your aid. If you
Spare me,
send me
send me
be
and me
only
only
clothed in
clothed in
mercy,
in
mercy,
where
mercy,
you
where
will.
you
where
will.
you will.
Make me an outpost of your kingdom, combining monastic rhythms and an outstretched heart with discipline of instant obedience, deployed as needed at the slightest whisper of command.
If you
Spare
spare
me,
me,
Send
send
me
me
only
only clothed in
in
mercy,
mercy,
where
where
you
you
will.
will.
The displaced and the hungry, the stranger and the needy, the heart sore and bereaved, those weary and bewildered, battered by a broken world, these held, their stories heard, still stumbling into healing, these become a tender task force, a living home for the alone.
Let me be at peace on my low wooden seat. One person aligned correctly with God's heaven, ready to let the fire in you flow through me, disarming many, yielding peace by practiced brokenness.
And all of God's people say,
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Andy. Our last call will be at 7 o'clock tonight. And I've sent you all the little reflection on the tides of the holy island of Lindisfarne for your consideration this afternoon, as well as the other readings. So peace to you all till we see you soon. And Andy, I'll see you again in a couple hours, right, my friend?
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, my friend.
Did that go okay?
That was lovely.